Okay, good morning. I've got my Mitchell MS 400 with Bill Lawrence L500s in Sertano double bender here, and I've got it going into Quilter Superblock UK, and then a JBL D208 plus a speaker that my friend Jason Tice at PMR/Hippopotamus created. It's a huge Alnico magnet on some JBL components in a 6.5-inch format. Sounds pretty good. I love it paired here with this in that little ZT cab for a little mini rig that I kind of dig those little mini sounds. So it's kind of like a hi-fi champ or something like that. But what I'm making a video about today is my friend Ron over at Stringwerks and the work he recently did for me on this guitar. So I handed him a bunch of components, including 2 Bourne's push-pull pots, and then a dual tone pot. So it's concentric pots, and you can turn the top independently of the bottom, and so they operate 2 different potentiometers in there. One of the potentiometers, this one has a normal capacitor, actually the capacitor that was in the guitar, and I'm sure I'll experiment with capacitors. But the bottom pot has a Bill Lawrence Q filter. So of course we've got the push-pull for turning these from humbuckers to single coils. We've got independent volumes for both. And I had him wire the entire setup, both pickups, out of phase with each other. So I can get those honky out of phase sounds pretty much whenever I want. I just have to balance the volume pots exactly. And that's the only, I won't even call it a complaint. Ron did an excellent job, and that's what the video is about, his excellent workmanship. But these are not set precisely at the same volume when they're at their max, and they are their taper is really sensitive, and so to get them back in phase, the volume levels are significantly different, and that's not normally a problem. Normally rolling off a little of the lead pickup or a little of the rhythm pickup to get that is just fine. But in this guitar, the volume levels end up being significantly different to get them back in phase. So ultimately I might decide to have better tapers on some dedicated pots, just not switch pots. Put some switches in somewhere, drill some holes, whatever. I've already drilled a hole in the top for this, and I'm considering drilling another one in order to move it back, because I think I'd like it better if it was set farther back and I was strictly using the heel of my hand to operate it. Because I do like to mute, and I do like to have, pick, or just sometimes picks, but my fingers down here and everything, and I think that might be easier. But the point of the video is just to not even really show you all the sounds. I'm sure I'll make a more detailed video on the sounds and the pickups and the Q filter and the wiring and all that stuff. There's probably a dozen videos to make about this one guitar, but I just wanted to send a shout out to my man Ron. Ran into some difficulties with the pickup rings, the ones that came with the pickups that fit real precisely around the edges. Don't fit the screw pattern, the holes for the screws here, mounting brackets essentially, to those Q Bill Lawrence pickup rings. So we had to use the original Mitchell pickup rings, put the pickups in there, and that's fine. It's just got a little bit of a gap here, so I've considered maybe having some custom made. Maybe I could get them made out of maple to match the binding on the guitar, flame maple. That'd be cool, and then they could match precisely. But I'm sure you won't be able to see this in the video, but what you can see with that gap is the amazing work that Ron did foiling these cavities. I provided him with some copper foil, and he has it looking way better than any guitar I've ever tried to do that on. And that's the whole idea here. I gave Ron a fair amount of money, a very fair price, to do a lot of work that on paper I could do myself. Like, I've got a real nice soldering iron over there. I struggled for many years with a crappy soldering iron, and I thought that getting a real fancy soldering iron would suddenly make me a soldering genius, but that's not the case. It takes a long time, my back ends up hurting, and my results are about 50-50. So half the time that I wire something up, plug it in and it works and it sounds good. The other half of the time it doesn't work at all, and then even in the half where it does work, a lot of that it works suboptimally. So there's noise, or I've got to jiggle the switch, or I've got to jiggle some pots and stuff to get it to cooperate, and you know, that's not a real giggable instrument, so to speak. Whereas this works exactly like I imagined it would work, and I didn't spend months and months and months with a guitar that wouldn't make noise. I sent it to him a week later, he had it done, and it worked just as advertised. Every single one of these sounds is usable and desirable. And no, it doesn't do like perfect telly tones when the pots are split. And no, it doesn't produce perfect strat tones. It produces tones that are unique to this guitar and these pickups, but those are good tones. I like them. And I like being able to, you know, roll that impedance, basically. This Q filter, I understand it's an impedance control, according to literature from Bill Lawrence that I've read. And at the extremes, you know, it produces extremely different sounds. And then there is a lot of subtlety in the middle. When you combine that with the function of a capacitor, both 100% available to you at all times, that's awesome. I love that. That's something I'll probably do on the majority of my guitars. Maybe not necessarily with concentric pots, but definitely through one way or another, I will want to do that, because that is the most usable tone controls ever. And when you start multiplying all the variation here, which, you know, it's infinite because it's got little in-between settings. There's no like setting 1, setting 2. These are just pots that can be turned, you know, tiny little increments. The volumes can be turned tiny increments, and it makes a big difference. But you've got just flat out math permutations with these on-off type things. So we've got, you know, a neck single coil available. We've got a bridge single coil available. We've got a neck humbucker available. We've got a neck or a bridge humbucker available. And then we've got any combination thereof, right? So that's a tremendous amount of variation. I suppose I could calculate that. But then we've got, you know, the switch can be in different settings. Here, that can be an infinite variation of volumes, which brings them in and out of phase. And so you've got infinite degrees of in or out of phase, and that's a heck of a lot of versatility. And that's something I've always dreamed would be a wonderful thing. You know, when I was young, the first guitar I bought was a Gibson Nighthawk, which Bill Lawrence, I didn't know, I had no idea who that was at the time, but that had that promise of so many variations. Hey, we got Gibson sounds, we got Fender sounds, and so I had that guitar, and it's a great guitar. I've still got it, still play it, but ultimately I found that it wasn't best of both worlds. It was a compromise, just like most of those best of both worlds designs, whether they be in guitar land or car land or house land or surfboards. I found that to be the case. You couldn't get a medium-sized surfboard that was everything a longboard was and everything a shortboard was. It just kind of doesn't work that way. But I've continued to pursue that flexibility. For a long time, I used modeling gear, which is, you know, kind of the same promise, ultimate flexibility. And I was always thinking, you know what, I'll experiment with this stuff and I'll determine what my favorite sound is, and then from there I'll be able to recreate my favorite sound with top of the line equipment and everything like that. But that was a dead end, because instead of being able to key in on my favorite sound, I was more or less, you know, bewildered by a bajillion options. So my pursuit of flexibility has not always been wonderful, until I found Quilter. That Quilter lived up to the promise of that flexibility in the context of amp world. And then this guitar, you know, the flexibility here is really endless, and they're all extremely usable. I can get to them. I can get on here and dial in a tone that I want to hear without a lot of difficulty. And then, you know, I can sit there and be playing. And while I'm playing, you know, make a change to the tone that I'm looking for, and get it to do that correctly, and not somewhere where my volume radically changes during playing a song. But some of the tones are extremely funky, like when you roll the tone all the way off and then you roll the impedance all the way off, you get this honky, thin, but darker sound. There's a treble bleed in here that facilitates some treble through that setting. You know, and again, I'll make a video demonstrating a lot of that stuff. But yeah, the promise of that flexibility is more realized in this guitar than any one that I've had before. And I've kind of been building that in for a long time. I'm definitely going to be taking a few guitars back to Ron to have them raised up to their highest level of potential so that they're as usable as this instrument. In particular, my Fender type with benders that has Bill Lawrence single coils. I may switch those in the process, but I want that guitar to perform like this guitar so that I can pick up either one and have a more or less similar playing experience, especially in terms of the bender function, which is, you know, just great in a lot of context. And I don't even begin to use it to its full capability, but it's, you know, so much fun that having that on a Fender type guitar that actually works is going to be great. So thank you so much, Ron. It's great to get to work with you. You did a fantastic job. You were great to deal with, fair dealing, all that. I look forward to a long and productive relationship of working on guitars, because I got a bunch of them and they're in varying states of functionality, and some of them sound exactly how I want them to, but most of them don't. And my previous answer to that question or dilemma is, hey, let me just get a different one. You know, I could spend, you know, a couple $100 on fixing it up or buying different parts or whatever, or, you know, I can just identify a different one being made in China to incredibly high standards and just get that, and, you know, see if I like that one better, and so on and so forth. I piled up a bunch of guitars probably 25% of them are in some state of disrepair and in need of attention. Even the ones that work, but they just don't work quite right. And, you know, I'd rather work with you and get those where they need to be, enjoy them a lot more, and just play those and not necessarily get any more. Because I've got, you know, arch tops, I've got electric guitars, I've got flat tops that you could probably improve. So I definitely look forward to working with you. It's like a good mechanic. If you find a good car mechanic, you know, stick with them, work with them. So much appreciated in that regard. And hopefully this video is of interest to some of your potential customers. But don't hesitate to have anybody reach out to me if they need a good talking to about working with you, if they're on the fence or anything like that. And thanks again. Happy holidays, everyone. More videos on this guitar to come.